I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I'd like to call our meeting to order tonight. And Betsy, will you call the roll, please? Okay, thank you. On to our approval of agenda. I need a motion then to approve our agenda for this evening as outlined in your board packet.
With exception of the audit.
With the, okay,
Yeah, I'd like to pull 10.2, please, the audit report.
Audit
It's
report,
not
okay.
ready yet.
It's not ready, so it won't be presented tonight. No objections to that. We'll pull 10.2 for action at another time. And I need a motion then to approve the agenda for this evening, minus 10.2 as presented in your board packet tonight.
So moved.
Thank you, Alan. And a second, please.
Second.
Thank you, Steve. And all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. Now we have some action items from closed session tonight, and we have several of them. The first one is, I need a motion to approve the recommendation of the administration to terminate the employment of Mr. Jason Hansen, School Resource Officer. Need a motion to approve that recommendation?
So moved.
Thank you. And a second?
I second.
Thank you. And call the roll, please.
Yes, Carter.
Yes.
Cop.
Yes.
Harley.
Yes.
Potter.
Yes.
Petermeyer.
Yes.
Weitzel.
Yes.
And Macy's.
Yes. Our second item coming out of executive session, a motion then to approve the closed session minutes for December 17th, 2012 and January 7th, 2013, as presented in your board packet tonight.
I move to approve those.
Thank you. And a second, please.
Second.
Thank you, Alan. And call the roll, please.
Carter.
Yes.
Cop.
Yes.
Harley.
Yes.
Potter.
Yes.
Petermeyer.
Yes.
Weitzel.
Yes.
Macy's.
Yes. Next item is I need a motion to accept the superintendent's recommendation regarding closed session minutes for the last 6 months, to open the minutes for November 6th, 2012 and September 17th, 2012, and to remain sealed the minutes from June 18th, July 23rd, August 27th, September 24th, October 22nd, November 26th, and November 28th, 2012. Thank you, John. And a second, please.
I'll second.
Thank you, Lisa. And call the roll, please.
Cop.
Yes.
Harley.
Yes.
Potter.
Yes.
Petermeyer.
Yes.
Weitzel.
Yes.
Carter.
Yes.
Macy's.
Yes. And our last item coming out of executive session is the motion to accept the superintendent's recommendation regarding audio conference recordings older than 18 months. And that is to destroy the minutes from May 11th, 2011, and those written minutes are open, and to keep audio recordings of closed session minutes of January 10th, January 24th, February 7th, February 28th, March 14th, March 27th, April 25th, May 23rd, and June 20th of 2011. Need a motion to approve? Thank you, John. And a second, please.
Second.
Thank you, Alan. And call the roll, please.
Harley.
Yes.
Potter.
Yes.
Petermeyer.
Yes.
Weitzel.
Yes.
Carter.
Yes.
Cop.
Yes.
Macy's.
Yes, thank you. Next, we have, under communications, we have a couple of good news reports.
We'll start with Mr. Lee.
The yearbook.
Mr. Lee, can you, so we can get you on the mic, please? Thanks.
Our yearbook was once again recognized, as they are nearly every year. They put out quite a good product, and this year they took second place overall in the Illinois Journalism Education Association. I know many of you have seen it. Your children have purchased it, but they took the first place in the area of best theme and second place in best layout for this last year's yearbook. Again, if you've seen it, it's an outstanding book, and those kids do a lot of work, and they spend a lot of time at different events, taking pictures and doing all sorts of things to put that book together. So once again, they were rewarded for their efforts.
Okay. Thank you. Great job, yes, congratulations to him. Next item is, on the good news, is a grant.
Mr. Murphy?
We submitted on a grant with BCEO for boiler tune-ups, improve efficiencies of boilers. We received a grant for approximately $45,000. Very happy we received it. Henson Robinson is currently making the adjustments to our equipment and improving gas efficiencies throughout the district.
Thanks, Dave. And then our next item, 5.3, citizens are, this is the opportunity for visitors to address the school board concerning any agenda topic. Anybody wish to address the board tonight on any agenda topic? No? Okay. We'll move on. Number 6, our consent agenda items tonight at 6.1 through 6.8. Is there anybody who wishes to pull any of those items for individual consideration? If not, I need a motion then to approve our consent agenda items 6.1 through 6.8 as presented in your board packet tonight.
I move.
Thank you, Steve. And a second, please.
Second.
Thank you, Alan. Call the roll, please.
Petermeyer.
Yes.
Weitzel.
Yes.
Carter. Yes. Pop.
Yes.
Harley.
Yes.
Potter.
Yes.
Nuisance.
Yes. The next item we have is personnel consent agenda, and we have 7.1 through 7.27. Is there anybody who wishes to pull any of those items out for individual consideration? If not, then I need a motion to approve personnel consent agenda items as presented in your board packet tonight, 7.1 through 7.27. Thank you, John. And a second, please.
I second.
Thank you, Linda. And call the roll, please.
Weitzel.
Yes.
Carter. Yes. Pop.
Yes.
Harley.
Yep.
Potter.
Aye.
Petermeyer.
Yes.
Nuisance.
Yes, thank you. On to old business, our second semester enrollment report.
Betsy, if you can pull up the comparison. This is just for information at this point so that you can see, the differences between our 6-day and our current count. So just a little bit under what we typically project, but we've still grown, as you can see. The 12, and this is just in second semester, so you're just seeing the growth in that time frame. We continue to have new students. The 6th day of 2012 versus the current enrollment. So it's about where we typically have, but we continue to have families move to the district even mid-year. Just for information, don't need to make any adjustments at this point. The one difficult part becomes for us is we have families move in if, for example, Glenwood Elementary School, if we have a student move into specifically 3rd grade, we're having to tell those families to enroll at Ball or Chatham Elementary, and then we're providing transportation because there simply isn't the space available in that building. And so we do that based on, when they come in, we look at the numbers, we look at the current, every month we get new updated enrollment from the school and to make sure that we know where, what building that child is being placed in, and whether or not it's going to, be beyond our recommended caps. Remember, we grew those class sizes last year. In the spring, we made that decision to do so to save money at the elementary levels, but they've grown even more so than we've expected. And so you get to a point where you can't have more than, we have 28 3rd graders in a classroom. And so you get to a point where you finally have to put your foot down and say, okay, now this child that's moving in to the district, we're going to have to put them at a different school, which we don't want to do, but by policy we can. And this is really the first year that we've ever had to do that I can recall, that we've had to place a student at another school because there's simply no room at that, which is part of the reason that we're talking about changing our boundary lines again, adjusting those edges of the boundary lines. But it's also a reason that we had to face, the reality of adding on to our buildings because we're having, we have a little bit more space available at Ball and Chatham, because we built Glenwood Elementary School, but we know that, families just keep moving here and it's a great problem, but it's still one that we have to address to make sure that we have space available for them. So it's a constant, as Mrs. Larson has somebody come in to register and prove residency, we have to get right on the phone. She gets right on the phone and calls the school to figure out what their numbers are, and sometimes they change daily, so she's...
My next call is Mr. Lovelace.
Yeah, and then she'll say, you need a bus from this point to this point, and sometimes it's not so easy, but they've been a good team, so we just wanted you to know our growth, even in second semester only, so...
I have a question. Those children who are going to a school outside of their home school, will they be reevaluated next summer?
Yes.
Yes, our goal is to make them
Yes.
go back to their
Good
home
question.
school within their boundaries. So we have a list going of those.
And we tell the parents that too, that the goal is to get them back into their neighborhood school. But, it's unfortunate because, sometimes you have a family move from, obviously from someplace out of the district, typically is what we're seeing. And then you have to tell them that, okay, yeah, your neighbors have told you this is the school, but it's not. It's going to be this school. And, Jill's handled it really well, and Jim,
There was some
but it's
fluctuation
difficult.
in semester, which helped. It's actually ball that is full at third grade.
Third grade.
And G has had some drops because it gets to be difficult when you have a family of 3 or 4 and they're all in the same school and but you have third grade full, but first and second aren't, so it gets to be really difficult.
Try to keep the family together
Yeah,
and...
we do everything we can to keep the family together.
This is the second year with 3 grade schools, and this is the case with me. You don't have this trouble when you only have 1 grade school, so it's, to some extent, it's an added difficulty because of the
Sure.
growth and because of now that we have
Sure.
3 grade schools.
Good point. So just for information, to keep you in the loop.
Okay. Next is instructional. Jill?
Just real quick, we have What I Need, that stands for WIN at GMS. We're going to make a change. Dr. Cox has worked with the staff for the last 2 years, and their efforts need to be complimented. They've done everything they can to make this time at the end of the day work. But Dr. Cox has surveyed our staff, and they really feel that this needs to go back into the instructional minutes. We reduced the instructional time from 2 years ago, from 45 minutes to about 41, 42 minutes. And we really put that time back in, so we'll go back to 45-minute class periods for next year. That allows the students to add a study hall, to have a study hall option. And where we took that option away when we put WIN in there. And the interventions and enrichment will still take place during the day, during that instructional time, that 45-minute class period. And if a child needs an intervention, then they'll take that in place of something else. So
This will allow them to take other electives too, right?
Yeah.
In that time
Yeah,
period,
I
not
mean,
just
they
study
can take
hall.
one elective, right,
Okay.
absolutely. Yeah, they have a choice.
Yeah.
Not everyone's going to take a study hall.
Sure.
As I've always explained to parents, sometimes your kids don't do very well in a study hall of 30, with their peers. Also, this is also a good transition to high school too, so.
This decision, if I heard you correctly, it was prompted because of the teachers
They definitely,
overwhelmingly,
yeah,
or
and they,
most
I would say overwhelmingly.
were happy.
Yeah, they would, the problem is, the middle school, high school, you really have to, it's a course versus an intervention. At K-6, it's truly an intervention because you have that time. But because you schedule and they move classes, it's more of a course, so.
Jill, were there RTI interventions during this winter
Yeah.
program?
The math, I would say that the math teachers probably got hit the most. I mean, there's middle school teachers here in the audience, but the math teachers, there just doesn't seem to be enough of them sometimes. But with that extra 4 minutes, you can actually start that homework and do some of that, where when you have, 15 minutes less or 20 minutes less a week, that's significant time.
So the RTI interventions will take place during the classroom time?
Well,
Or will they
part
take
of
place
that,
in
or
study hall?
they'll take place instead of an elective. They have 2 choices right now. So we'll go back to that, they'll have 2 choices. And some of them will, if the data proves that they need an intervention, they'll just take an intervention versus an elective, but they'll still have 1 elective option.
An intervention course?
Like critical reading or critical math. Absolutely.
And the critical reading and the critical math are in addition to the
One
regular,
elective.
the
Right.
regular reading and the regular
Correct.
math?
in addition to. There's just more flexibility at an elementary level than there is at middle school, high school level. But I do applaud the staff for all they've done because they've, they switch kids a lot and have different kids and do all that. And try to make those data decisions. So that should be applauded.
Any other questions?
One other thing.
Okay.
I know that we told you in a meeting that we were going to study the time switch between the Glenwood High School and Glenwood Elementary. And due to the number of issues with our athletes, over half of the student body is involved in some kind of extracurricular. It makes 100 more times that an athlete would have to leave school early if you move the time from 8:45 to 3:45. So we've decided not to do that. So, it went from 37 to 145.
Because what happens
It's
is.
just too much.
We had talked about that we would be willing to take on, the practice time, the issue of practice time, and switching there and asking those sports to practice in the morning. And we said because academics drive everything, obviously. And we said that would be something that we could take on, but we were very concerned about how many times students currently leave the school, say the boys golf team, how early they leave school already for their competitions, and what that would mean if you added another hour for them to have to leave. So not only is a child missing, essentially one period, probably they're missing two, and how many times. So Athletic Director Dan Rourke brought us that data to see that, these are the number of times that students leave early, and then we obviously can see that a child would have to leave even earlier should we adjust these times. And we said it's just not worth it because that's an impact on student achievement. That's an impact on student academic programs. So, because we know that a lot of our programs travel to Quincy or to quite far away to get them there on time. They'll have to leave even earlier. So we just weren't willing to take that risk that students would lose even more time in the classroom. So that was one that we decided we would. We also heard a lot back from families that, again, this is one we were willing to work around, but families that say, talk about high school babysitters after school. But that was one that we were willing to take on. This was a sacrifice we weren't willing to make, that we would have students leaving their school even earlier if they participated in one of those sports. So.
Okay, thank you. Next, we go into financial, some information on cash flow analysis. Mr. Murphy?
Here's my good news report. Just real brief, and this will help set the stage, I think, for later conversation. Working with PMA, and they're able to help us with this service to look at over the previous years and then project forward based on our budget and trends of when we've received money, when we've had expenses in previous years. They put together a cash flow analysis based on our fund balance. Of course, these are unaudited numbers still. So going from the unaudited numbers, the projection there, you can see where it starts to dip into the red is where you would potentially not have enough cash on hand to meet an expense. Traditionally, payroll would be the likely scenario there, and it's tentatively as early as late March, but more realistically, there's a time period in April when the district will be short of some cash. This is while it's unfortunate, it certainly wasn't necessarily unexpected. If you'll remember last year, we did go out for and approve a line of credit, and it was for 2 years, knowing that last year was not as realistic, but it was more of a possibility this year because of other things that were already in place with the budget and stuff at that time. So here we are, just letting you know that using the cash flow analysis looking forward, it's very likely that April, just as we had projected sort of last year, is the likely time when we may need to use that line of credit. So that's why we are thankful that we have that. Certainly didn't wish we needed to. Unfortunately, it's just the situation we're in. And early tax money will start to flow April and May, and it's really a timing issue of when it comes in versus when payrolls are due and when other bills are due, how much of the line we'll have to tap at each time. But it's very likely April and into May, we'll need to use that line.
Patrick, am I correct in that we were ready to use it last year, but we didn't have to?
We did use.
We did have to just minimally, and it was within a day or two of receiving tax money, but it still had to be tapped just in order to cover we might have, it was literally money was coming in the same day money was going out, and due to timing of banks, we didn't want to chance it. And so that was one scenario, literally to a day, that we just had to just a little bit. But it was more likely that this was the year when it was going to become more of a reality that we needed it, which is why we really went for it last year, just as more of a precaution. But this year was the thought was it was more likely it was going to happen this year, that we needed time to be able to right the ship. And unfortunately, this is the year when it's going to hit. If things don't change, that's what the other charts there going forward. If things weren't to change and you were to maintain current budgets, current revenues, current expenses, you can see how that grows and how much earlier in your year you're out of cash. So it's not good news, but it gives us information to be able to make the decisions for next year's budget, even in some expenses for this year that maybe can be put off again, knowing, cash is an issue.
As you can see, I don't know if you can see the dates on those, that, that first round is this spring, and then it just continues to grow over time because that's your short-term borrowing. And you look at your short-term investments as well, go decline. We, like Patrick said, this paints the picture for us on how important it is that we make the budget cuts. While they're not fun to make, they're very tough decisions to have to make. Especially when you're talking about salaries and you're talking about positions and people that are in those positions. We know that we have to make those decisions because as we go over time, the picture gets worse and worse. And we have less and less to give for have on short-term investments, and we have more and more on our short-term borrowing. And those tax anticipation warrants are easy lines of credit to get, somewhat easy because it's in anticipation of your taxes. So immediately that's the person that you pay back first. So we can tap that line of credit, but anytime a district has a tax anticipation warrant like we did last spring, it's a big red flag that something is not right because you're not able to meet your obligations. And so we're not able to meet our obligations, and Patrick mentioned in payroll as well as in accounts payable. So sometimes the solution is to delay some of your accounts payable until you get that, get back on when you've received your funding. But you can only do so much of that, and you have to make payroll. I mean, we can't tell our staff, we're going to wait till next month to pay you. So you either go out and borrow, or you do that. You say, we'll just hold on to your payments until next month. You can't do that. So this is when we saw this, we knew that we had some a big need to right the ship, but this told us even more so about our picture of overall health and district health. So
it's not even enough to balance a budget, you have to build your reserves to back up.
Right.
So in the difficult times and the unknown times with the state continuing to toss the idea around that there could be additional appropriations and additional programs, seeing reductions that haven't before, it's difficult still now to project what those would be, but we have to be in a situation that we're not incurring any more expenses than is absolutely necessary, and hopeful that we can get as much revenue and build up some reserves so that we're not in this situation in the future years.
Is this all 4 operating funds, or is this 5?
This is excluding capital projects. So,
your total funds.
It's our working operating fund. So.
Any other questions?
Now, in reading, maybe a comment here.
Yeah, sure.
In reading what the state has been doing for years, their delays and their cuts in the dollars to education and really forced all of the districts to deplete their reserves. So this is a common scenario around the state.
Yeah, there's over 500 school
Absolutely.
districts that are deficit spending this year.
Out of 830
Yeah, and
or
that's
something?
not to make
Any
an
that are
excuse, but to
relying
let you
on
know that
general
we're
state aid,
certainly not
yep.
alone in this type of budget, or having to go out for loans or lines of credit. We don't want to, but we're not alone. It's a statewide issue. However, we have to fix ours as best we can.
So if the rumor of the general state aid may be down to 80 or 82%, there's going to be more red on that.
Yeah.
Yes.
If expenses don't change with the projections for revenues, that's right.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, thanks, Patrick.
My pleasure.
Patrick.
Thanks.
10.2, we postponed that. It was the audit report. Next one is farm land lease.
Sure. Annually, the lease requires us with the tenants to negotiate a price, and so a recommendation to the board that I'm presenting is that we look to increase the current rent per acre from $300 to $400 per acre. A second recommendation, also before the board, is that just accept that or give me another number that I can go back to them with if you'd like. But based on the research, we think that's a very fair value right now for the farmland they're renting. But a second part of this is for your consideration also is to, instead of annually, allow us to do this in 2-year terms so that they would lock them in. They would know what the rent is for at least 2 years. We would know what it is. We wouldn't have to do this annually with them. That's just for your consideration. Actually, I need some recommendation from you and negotiate that with them. But so that's what's before you right now.
And have you discussed this with them as far as?
I believe that the price is acceptable. From my initial conversations, I believe that's a price they're open to.
I defer to an expert.
Yes.
Analyst.
Locking in the rate for 2 years, was that something that they pushed for or we suggested or?
It was their request.
Mutual.
I wouldn't go any more than 2.
Correct.
That's fair.
And I know the board has expressed interest in selling the land, and there's provisions in there for should we sell or need to build on the land, either one that would change the terms of the lease, obviously at that point, because part of the land or all of the land would no longer be built with them.
This isn't just the Second Street property though, right? This is
Correct.
the
Yeah, there's approximately 139 acres in total here.
It's behind the high
Part of
school.
the area behind high school they purchased as well.
Those two.
Right.
Is the farm signed up in the USDA program? And who
I do
gets
not know.
And who gets that?
I do not know.
Might
Find
want
out.
to Who? Well, the contract says that every year we're going to enter in landlord and tenant shall decide each year whether to enter into the program and how payments for doing so and the cost involved shall be shared. So we might want to just check. If they get it, that's fine because they're paying a pretty good price. So.
Okay. I'll check on that.
But I'm assuming it's signed up. I just need to make sure.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. Thanks, Patrick.
Well, I need.
I know, I'll do that.
I got it.
He wants a thumbs up.
That's next. That's
Thumbs up to increase.
All right, if there's no other questions or comments, I need a motion then to approve the recommendation to increase the rent for land lease from the current price of $300 per acre to $400 per acre, and lock that rent price in for 2 years. Need a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Alan. Need a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you.
For ask Steve, just comment so that this seems fair to you.
Yes.
With your back.
And call the roll, please.
Yes. Carter.
Yes.
Cobb.
Abstain.
Harley.
Yes.
Cutter.
Yes.
Petermeyer.
Yes.
Weitzel.
Yes.
Nucis.
Yes. Okay, thank you. On to new business. 11.1 under new business is some budget reduction planning information.
Betsy, if you can open the PowerPoint, which is the second. Okay. I want to go through this with a little bit of explanation about each category, and then I'll show the overall budget cuts that we're talking about tonight. What our plan is that tonight's will be a discussion that we'll have, the board for information only and for any questions that you might have that we can address. And then in February would be when we would ask for action of these items. As you know, we talked about our goal being close to $3 million to get back in the black and start adding back to our reserves. That's been our target all along. That's a very difficult task, but we're working very hard at it, and we're getting close to that number, but we're not quite there yet. So we know that we still need to make some reductions, and we're still talking about some things that we can do in terms of what can happen from this point. But we know that your goal was always to stop deficit spending. That was your goal that you gave us, your charge that you gave us as a board, as well as with that the least amount of impact to students. And that's what we did when we looked at these when we looked at these budget cuts. Our timeline, we started the discussions in the spring, really talking a lot about zero-based budgeting for our school supply budgets. We really talked to a lot of the teacher leaders last spring. We talked to, before the school year even started, we talked about zero-based budgeting, where we start with nothing rather than starting with last year's budget and adding to it. We said, let's start with zero, tell us exactly what you need. And we had some conversations with our teacher leaders about, if we've ordered, 500 pencils for 6th grade, do we still need that? Or can we reduce down? Or, what are those little things that we can do that really have no impact to anyone other than we're just going to tighten our belts? And so they did a very nice job. The principals led that charge with their teachers, leaders, and having those discussions in the buildings about, we may have had it in the past, it was nice to have, but can we do without it? And we got down to $1 million in cuts last spring in just those school supply budgets. Then the next conversation was really in regards to elementary class sizes. And we had a lot of conversation about increasing. We have a cap, as you all know, we have a cap in policy that is a recommended cap. But the district has always followed that to the law, to the letter of the policy, to make sure that we always, what happened was, if we said we had 21 students in kindergarten was our cap, if we got close to that number, we would always add a teacher. And we would do so in the fall because we know we get the best teaching candidates applying for jobs in the spring, before that school year. So we were pulling the trigger on, let's go ahead and hire a teacher. And then sometimes we would end up with class sizes of 18, because then obviously those numbers are spread out, and sometimes you'd end up with very small class sizes. And so that's nice to have, but it's not fiscally responsible, because it's just, those salaries and benefits are what make up 81% of your ed fund. And so that was a really important conversation to have at that point. The elementary teachers did their part and stepped up and said, that they were willing to obviously provide the same type of high quality instruction with that increased class sizes. And so we've done that for this year. We've let those class sizes grow. Some of them have grown even more so than we had projected, but we've let those grow. In July, we had an entire administrative team retreat, and we really started with Post-it notes, and we started with, just brainstorms of what could be cut, what things are maybe duplicate services or overlapping of positions that we could talk about. And we had a long list that we continued to all year long. We revisited that with the administrative team, and that's the principals, assistant principals, and directors, and really making sure that we had a brainstorm list. We, like I said, revisited it often. Patrick then attached numbers to it so that we could determine what our priorities could be in terms of savings. Then, like I said, we've had lots of those discussions. Our process is typically that, on that next slide, Beth, the process is, oh, I'm sorry, wrong way. One more, okay. The process is typically that we would seek a great deal of staff input on decisions. We have action teams in the district. We do, a great deal of processing with our staff. And we still want to do that, but on budget cuts, this is one where we simply can't do that same process. We can't have an action team to say, what would you cut from the district budget? And the reason is because we would be asking teachers to determine, I need to cut something that impacts my position and my family, or it impacts my peers. And that's something that we simply know is not feasible. I mean, we can't ask staff members to cut each other's positions or to cut their own positions. And so we unfortunately have to make this decision at some level of administration, which is why we have a great deal of input from the building principals and the directors. So when we do that, sorry, I'm following my computer and I almost lost it. When we do that, then we focus heavily on job responsibilities and prioritize those that could be absorbed. So we looked at those list of job responsibilities, not who's in them, but instead, because it's not a performance evaluation, and I've kind of talked about that before when we reduced 2 administrative positions. It's not about who's in that position and how well they're doing or what they're doing. It's about what their job responsibility is providing, what job tasks they have to do, and can it be absorbed with another person in the district. And so we looked very closely at what position could be absorbed and that work could be done by someone else. And so those were the tough decisions that we had to make, and they're still very difficult to make. I'm going to skip ahead one more. Like I said, we talked about supplies first and increased those 2 administrative positions. There was a tech assistant that wasn't replaced some time ago that we just absorbed that position. To date, And then if you go ahead to the next, these are actually our FY14 recommendations. So when you look at administrative reductions, one of the things that I have been, it's I think when you have tough decisions to make, when you have tough times, such as what we're dealing with in the district, and they're so unprecedented. We've never had these types of issues in our district. When you're faced with those, it's truly humbling to me, and I can't think of a better word than that, to see how people step forward and say that that it's time to make a change, and that they understand that it will impact them, but they're willing to take on some of that burden. And this is one that that I'd like to call out, because I had a handful of administrators come directly to me, a few together and then several on their own, and say, I'm willing to take a pay freeze. And to me, that speaks huge volumes, because they all know that their checks, more and more from the state government and the federal government, we see it coming out of our checks every year. But they came and said, and also cost of living is increasing, but they said, we understand that there is a burden that has to be shared across the district, and we're willing to freeze our salaries. So that's what we're doing across the district, is to freeze all administrative salaries. That includes assistant principals, that includes principals, and that includes directors, district office, as well as those that are in the buildings. And so I just think it speaks volumes for those people, and they know who they are, and it speaks to a character, I think, that somebody is willing to, and to not just their character, but to their commitment to this district. I think that, as well as I've had people, today I released, as you know, a couple letters to our staff as well as to our parents, that said, this is what we're doing. And I've had people since then say, you know what, I thought of something else. It impacts me, but I thought of something else. You can reduce my number of days by a day. And support staff have said that to me. So it just is truly shows, I think, what we all know about our district, which is people want to be here, and people feel like this is their community and their home, and their schools are an essential part of their community, and they want to share that burden and give that piece, that sacrifice to the district. So when we also had that conversation about salary freezes for administrators, we also talked about salary ranges. And in the past, we've not had that. We've had the superintendent would make a recommendation for the increase of the salaries of the administrators, and there was no cap. So it would just get to a point where, someone would be at this point just because they had grown, and they were compounded increases over time. What we're suggesting is that, and I don't have it prepared just yet, because what I'm looking at is comparisons for other districts too, and I want to present that on a separate line item so that we can look at it, but that we would have a cap for administrators, so that at some point the raises would not be compounded on top of their current salary. Instead, it would be a lump sum longevity bonus. So if you've been here this number of years and you've capped out, let's say at the top of for your position, because each position would have a different salary range, we would say, when you cap out, you get a lump sum payment for your longevity, but it doesn't compound onto your salary every year, so that it gets beyond the range. There will be more information on that to come. We've reduced professional membership fees for administrators. Currently in their contracts, they have a certain number of professional organizations that they can join, and the district pays for that. That is a benefit to them, but it clearly has a cost attached to it. We have clearly they use them for professional reasons, and we don't want to not have that. So we're talking about just reducing that, not completely eliminating it, but principals and assistant principals and directors will then be responsible for joining those memberships, those professional organizations on their own, and paying for it out of their own pocket, because if they want to join those to get those resources, they'll have to make a choice about what they want to join, the one that they want to join for the district, and then they can choose to add on some of the others on their own. But the district would reduce the number that we provide them. And then same thing with district cell phones, those have been reduced this year. On facilities, we have some changes, some recommended reductions in terms of, there is an energy stipend that is given currently to one staff member who analyzes data in regards to energy costs. And essentially what the idea was behind it is that the savings could be offset the stipend could be offset by the savings to the district. And what we're saying now is that what we've studied and talking to Dave Murphy is that he can absorb that. He can do that work for us with his current staff and with himself. But also because of the and Dave can speak more to it, but we don't, if you have questions about it, but he can also, because of the technology, of the systems he has in place, they're much more energy efficient, clearly, but also he has more data than he had had in the past.
It was redundant systems, so
Yes.
we're just eliminating one side of the system.
Very good, thank you. Also, he has some supply reductions that he is willing to make. In his department. Some of the custodial supplies as well, just reducing some of those. He's analyzed across the district and what he could reduce, and some third-party contractual services for some types of cleanings and whatnot. There are 4 positions that we're recommending across the district that we eliminate, custodial positions, and those we'll have more information on, but currently we are talking about the ability to absorb 4 positions. Summer utility savings, this is really in regards to moving what parts of buildings we close down during the summer, what parts we still keep open, what needs to be kept open. We've analyzed this over the past couple of years, but really getting down to only this section of this building will be, will have air conditioning during the summer, or only, this building will be used for summer school. So there's a possibility that we would move, like, let's say the high school to the middle school, I think we're talking about. To high school summer school would be held at the middle school. So we're talking about all of those types of cost savings for summer utility. The next are that I have on this list are staffing modifications. What changes we have, suggestions we have for staffing. We've talked about the increase of the high school, currently at 10 students. They have a minimum of 10 students for a class, and we're asking them to increase that to 15. Now remember that there's a caveat there that some of our special ed classrooms are smaller than that. We also might have some situations where it would be needed that a student, especially for student course planning. So if we have the need for a sequence of courses, we'll study that to determine whether or not we need to make sure that that course is offered. We've also talked about the fact that we could maybe offer some courses every other year so that a student can take it 1 year, but then it wouldn't be offered the next year. So we've talked a lot about that, and that's really what the high school has talked about. They need to get the details of that, what that would look like specifically. The other thing is to increase. Currently our high school teachers teach the majority, with the exception of the electives teachers. They teach 5 sections. They have a duty and a prep and a lunch period. And their duty is, let's say, a study hall coverage. And what we're talking about is asking the staff to teach 6 sections rather than the 5, and this will allow us to reduce clearly some positions. The goal would be to absorb as much as we can in those positions with retirements, but we would present a RIF list to the district or to the board to take action on in the spring, based on what we can do in terms of where the high school ends up staffing. Now, the hard part is, at this point, this is an approximate savings number, because you still are having students currently, select what classes they're going to take. So you have to look at what students have selected, course selections, as well as then look at what teachers are then slated for those classes. And then when you create a RIF list, you would get a much more detailed or exact number, because you would know what that actually, that teacher is making, and you could add up those costs. So at this point, it is simply an approximate number. The next one is 6 library aides. We have in this district, we're very fortunate to have 6 certified staff members who are our librarians, and we're fortunate to have 6 library aides. And that is simply one that we can no longer afford to keep. So we spoke to the library aides and explained to them that this is a reduction that we're making, a recommendation that we're making. And so the librarians would then, be in the libraries. There could be some adjustments that need to be made in terms of, if they're going out to the classrooms to give some sort of support, they may need to bring that support into the library so that there's coverage in the library as well. So those are the conversations, those are the details that need to be worked out in the individual buildings. What we do, is to present a recommendation in terms of the cost savings. The next one is team leaders, middle school and high school team leaders. Currently, we have department chairs and we have team leaders in both of those buildings. Department chairs are, math, science, English, those department chairs. And then we have team leaders who are, let's say, the culture and climate team at the high school has a team leader. We have, at the middle school, we have teams that each group have cross-curricular groups that are teams. And so we were talking about eliminating those team leader positions. Another reduction for absorbing one secretarial position. Again, this is one that we've talked a great deal about when we, like I mentioned in the earlier part of this, that we had a lot of conversation about what can be absorbed, what tasks can be absorbed. And this is one that we looked at and said, we can absorb some of this work with the staff that is on hand. The next one is to eliminate the PLC/GPT is professional learning communities and group. It used to be called group planning time. That's the middle school concept. That is when there are cross-curricular conversations about student needs, and we're asking that teachers teach an additional section rather than have that prep. Again, they have a prep time, and we are required to offer that prep time to teachers as well as their lunch time. We obviously have those, but to add that extra additional duty, you can see the savings is a large one. The athletic intermediate school, middle school, and high school athletic budgets is in regards to some stipends and uniforms and supplies, but it's still being, we're going to bring more details because the athletic directors are still working on the details of specifically which that would be. Sometimes some of the conversations are what in the community can community, YBA, BAC, CVSI, CCFL, what are those organizations willing to help us and offer, instead of the school district offering? Remember that, several years ago we had an athletic improvement plan, and it added a red and a white team to a lot of our sports so that we could get as many students participating as possible. That was a good thing. We're not saying that that's a bad thing. We still very much appreciate the ability to offer to as many students as possible the ability to participate. But we also have some community sports that students can be in if they don't make the team. Like I said, there's YBA and there's CVSI. There are other, SASA is another local one, that they have the ability to play even if they're not on our sport. And so what happens sometimes is there are several things that the athletic directors need to look at. One is that how many students are enrolled or participating in that program, or that sport. How many are participating? What's the cost of that sport? Looking at the cost versus how many are participating, those are important conversations for them to have. They also look pretty heavily at, their conversations have been about, can we schedule enough games for that group? So for example, if other districts are cutting their 6th grade sport, can we find someone to play? Can we find someone for both of our teams to play? So if we have a red and a white team, are there teams for them to play? Can we build a schedule, essentially? Or is it going to be something that we're going to really struggle to find teams for them to play, and we're going to have to send our kids quite far out to even find competition? So some of these need to have, we hope we'll have some really good conversation with, and I've actually already talked to a couple of people, and I know Ryan Green has too, about in the community about helping step up, and they understand that need. Because when you have a community event, when you have a rec program, you have students playing other students in the district, and so you can build a schedule, whereas sometimes it's difficult for us to build a schedule with some of our sports. That's still being talked about, and we'll bring more information about that. The 2.5 hall monitor positions at Chatham Elementary, it is the person who buzzes in folks to the building. We would need to relocate. For example, we would need to readjust how the secretaries are viewing, and how the process is. And we've talked to Randy, and we've talked to Dave Murphy about what adjustments can we make to that facility to make sure that someone has an eye on the door as they're buzzing in. And to Mrs. Sepich, obviously, too, as part of that conversation. The middle school and high school, just absorbing and determining what coverage we have in the building at the time, at all times. And Randy has been an important part of that conversation, as well as the building principals. The next one is in regards to, we have quite a few staff members who have extended day contracts. And this is again one where we're talking about sharing the burden. We're talking about sharing across the district some of the load in order to reduce. And so some of the ones that you have listed are, you'll see that like 195 is the current number of days on that contract, and what we're recommending be explored as far as what they could go to, and then the savings that's attached to those individual contracts. The others kind of under other. Give me a minute to look at those. Next slide. The others are, again, some more, just like with athletics, we've talked about to the principals, and they're making the decisions about what extracurricular programs, what club sponsorships could be eliminated. And again, much like our athletic directors are doing in terms of what athletic programs can be reduced, the principals, namely at the middle and high school, because that's who it affects the most, are looking at how many students are participating in that club, what types of events how often they meet, what kinds of competitions. So we ask them to weigh also, when making those decisions, how many are needed for, let's say, a college application. We know that some are something that a student would list on a college application, or would list on, their applications to work, or to, like I said, college, or after school, after they graduate. So those we want to look at carefully to determine not only how many are enrolled, but also what types of other opportunities are for those students, and is it a competitive group, or is there something that the children will win awards for, those types of conversations. And we've asked Dr. Cox and Mr. Lee to come back with a recommendation. We don't have that tonight to show you specifically what those are, but they have some pretty good idea, and so we will bring those forward in February. The new buses, we're making a recommendation that we let our fleet age. Over time, we've always had a cycle of, buying new buses, and clearly that's because of reasons that you don't want your fleet to age so much that you're spending more on mechanical issues, and you're spending more on, fixing, or spending more on fixing it, essentially, when you, just like at home, when you go buy a new car, when is it worth it to go ahead and go buy a new car? And so we're just saying, let's let our fleet age a little bit more than we're used to, and put off any purchases until the future. The freshman advantage change is, we talked a lot about, and we sat down with Mr. Lee and said, would there be an ability to hold, rather than hiring back our staff in August, would there be an ability to hold freshman advantage during finals, during the high school final time? Because we thought, there's a time in the building that students are coming in for makeup exams, for example, and that's a time that we have staff members there, so that children, all 8th graders, it would be a bonus because all 8th graders, we could save money obviously, but all 8th graders would be participating. We would send them over to the high school, but also because we'd have all of our staff on hand. We could even possibly feed them lunch, and Mr. Lee is looking at this, but could we feed them lunch? Could we show that, this is what your day would be like, essentially, for our 8th grade students? And so that, the fact that we could have all students participate, as well as have, students meet many staff members throughout their day, would be a bonus, because that's, like I said, during the time that maybe makeup exams are being distributed to students. So we could have some flexibility there on how we could set that up. The last one is in regards to Ms. Barham really needs to be applauded for the fact that she has offered programs in our district that we didn't have in the past, and she's really improved. Since we pulled out of SASED, she's really improved our offerings as a district, and she and her staff have worked very hard to make that happen. And some of the students that we might have typically sent to SASED in the past their needs are being met in the local district, in the neighborhood district, which is always your goal. I mean, that's always your goal, to have students have their needs met here in the district. We know that there are still students who need a therapeutic day school, that's what makes sense for them. And so we still want to have some seats at SASED Central, but when we pulled out of SASED Central, there was an agreement that if we wanted this number of seats, we would pay for them regardless of if we use them or not. And so what we were revisiting with SASED, and she's had a lot of conversations with them about, can we only pay for what we know we need right now? And then we'll come back to you and add on if we need to later. And they said yes, that's something that they're willing to accommodate. And so we were, very grateful for her collaboration with them, as well as with her entire special ed department, about how we can make that work, because it's a significant number as well. Okay, so if Betsy will pull up the other link, and then I'll just entertain questions from the board. And some of the directors or principals might be able to help me out, but are there questions? I went through it pretty quickly. Again, no need to make a decision tonight on any of these. This is just for information only, but we want you to see where we are. We think we're getting close to, with some other things that we have in our mind, we're getting pretty close to 2.75 million. And I just think it takes a huge effort across the entire district to make that happen. And I'm pretty proud of our team that really has taken this sleepless nights thinking, what else can we cut? We laughed one time because we said, anything that walks into the district office, we say we cut, because we're just in that mindset right now of, nope, you can't afford that, you can't afford, let's cut. And so we're in that mind frame, which is a good place to be, but constantly revisiting what you told us you wanted, which was, the least impact to students possible. We want to see what we can absorb, what we can do without, and then hopefully someday we can return to some of these programs and services. But at this point, we know from the cash flow alone, as well as from where our reserves are, that we have to cut back, and we have to make a pretty big cut, or else we just keep going further into the red.
I have 3 comments I'd like to make. First of all, Carrie, I recall you were one that said you would freeze your salary.
I did.
So,
I did.
You were one of those people.
Thank you.
Who said that you would do that, and we thank you for that. And also the freshman advantage. To be able to have all of our 8th grade attend, I think is a wonderful idea.
Right.
Definitely a benefit to all of our 8th graders and getting them ready for school. I guess the challenge will be keeping the building quiet enough for final exams.
True. That will be a challenge for them to approach.
And my third question is, when you said the GHS staff has a duty and their prep and their classes, plus their lunch, who is going to absorb their duties, such as a study hall?
We've talked about, could we look at a paraprofessional to cover those study hall duties, and so we haven't made a recommendation at this point, but we've talked about, could we have a position that is a special need, or I'm sorry, not special need, a paraprofessional study hall, that is that person's job to oversee some of the study hall duties.
And I do know that's done at Sacred Heart Griffin. I know they do that. There's somebody they hired that all they do is study halls.
Some districts do, yeah.
Okay. Very concise, elaborate list. Thank you.
I'd say my concern would be the PLCs at the middle school, and we don't want this to adversely affect achievement in the district and accomplishment. How do we replace?
Now remember that when you negotiated, when the last contract was negotiated, there was an additional time period that was built into the school's calendars. We did add time, and so we do know that there is a great deal of collaboration and professional development that happens in that extended time every week. So we have that to our benefit. We have that to our advantage. And teachers' raises were, given accordingly to accommodate for that additional time period every week that they added into their contract. So we do have some flexibility there. That's a good question.
And I have a question on the changing the days, the extended day contracts. And I would imagine that you will be talking with the administrators or have talked with the administrators on their recommendations for this and how it would affect.
Every one of these have had input from the teams. And then we've also, the one thing that we felt like, we know that these are extremely difficult conversations to have. We know that these are extremely tough times for you, to make these cuts, and for our administrative team, the people who have to, face, it's not easy to tell someone that their job's being eliminated, and that you appreciate what they've done for you, and that you value them as a team member, but you simply can't afford their jobs anymore. because this isn't a performance issue, like I said. That's almost an easy one. When you say to someone, your performance is less than stellar, so we're going to eliminate you from the organization, it's a completely different conversation when you have to say, we simply can't afford your position. And those have been the most difficult conversations I think I've ever had in this district, because you're looking in someone's eyes and saying, hey, I appreciate you, you've done a good job, but I can't afford your position anymore. And so, and I've said that before, I know I've told you guys that before, but where do we go with that? I lost my train of thought.
Talk to the administrator.
But when we've gone to them and said that these are the adjustments. The one thing that I started to say was, even though these are tough conversations, what we've tried to say and give out the directive to principals to tell, sometimes they're telling their staff members, but sometimes it's us as a district office sharing that information. But that we've always had the philosophy that we tell people as soon as possible. Because, for example, our 2 administrators, we said we're going to tell them as soon as possible about this change, because they need to have the time to prepare whatever it is that will happen to, whatever they choose to do after that point. We also feel the same way about all of these cuts. It's January, and we feel like it's really important that we tell our staff members. So those that were affected, we made sure that someone was telling them, those that are affected, before tonight, because we feel like it's important that they know that and they understand what's happening, as well as, even though no votes are taken tonight, that we still wanted them to know and not, let's say, read it in the paper. We think that that's the most appropriate way to handle this. And those are the types of compliments that we've gotten as a staff, as administrative team, that thank you for how you've approached it. Not thank you for the reduction or those types of things. It's a difficult conversation. Most people that I've heard from today and previously, but mostly today, I've gotten quite a few emails saying, we know this is a really difficult time for the district. We appreciate that. And these are some of the people who have been cut. Their positions have been completely eliminated, or being recommended to be completely eliminated. They've said thank you for how you've come to us and how you've approached this. And so that to me is a compliment to our team, that they they have that human side of them, that let's approach this the right way. There is no way that we can balance a budget without making some of these difficult, tough decisions. We can't do it because you can't find other places. We have searched high and low. There are many places we've searched and we've weighed how can we absorb it, or can we do without it? And there are only so many places that we can find. And because of that, we've made these tough decisions, but we know that the most important thing to do is to give people plenty of time to decide, if my job is being eliminated, I'll have until June or July, to decide what it is I want to do. Maybe apply for something else in the district or find employment elsewhere.
I thank you to the administrators who've had the conversations. I appreciate all of your work, and I know how difficult it is to have to make these suggestions, and I appreciate you all working together, and I appreciate you working with Carrie to, most importantly, make cuts that aren't directly impacting student instruction, because the bottom line is we're here about our kids, to educate our kids. And I know it's a difficult conversation. Carrie's had lots of conversations with us about the need to do this, and it's hard. It's very difficult to do, and I just appreciate everything that you're putting, all the effort that you're putting into this. So thank you.
Carrie, I got a question. A couple months ago, you had a reduction sheet here that had 2 different years, or 2 different school years.
You want me to explain mine? Oh.
What kind of numbers are we still looking at for 2012, 2013, and are these new ones, are they all for 2013, 2014?
Correct. Those are for 13, 14, the ones that are presented tonight. Some of those were reminders of what we've done to date, such as the $1 million of school supplies and some of those types of things. But we're really looking at tonight just what recommendations for 13, 14.
So how much more are we looking at for this school year?
Our goal was to get to $3 million, as close to that as possible.
Not this year.
Oh, not for this year.
This
Right.
sheet here's got some 2012.
Right, but I can't cut anything at this point, other than to absorb, if someone leaves the organization, can we absorb their position?
So
Because
is there a number
for 12, 13?
for this? Yes. that we're
No.
still looking at trying
Other
to
than, no,
to hit
other.
to balance?
We would love to be able to not have to borrow money in the spring like we did last year. But other than, we have told principals that we oftentimes do this where we say, at some point in the spring, we say, we're going to freeze your supplies budgets. And they know that, they've felt that every year, that we say, at some point, we say, cut off spending, essentially. And with the exception of, obviously, you have to buy toilet paper and paper towels, some of those things that you don't keep on hand, but to cut off spending, because if at some point, in the year, you say, if you haven't bought it yet, do you really need it? Books, or, those types of things. If you haven't had it so far, do you really need to spend it? Short of, there are definitely exceptions to that, such as pre-K and IDEA and, Title I. They have to spend their money, it's a grant, so they have to spend it. But we do cut off spending at some point during the year, and we hadn't put a target number on that, but clearly, the ideal target would be that we could maybe, start to get rid of that red that Patrick showed you on our cash flow. But we know realistically, the people we have in place are on contract, so you can't just start, we couldn't just say, we're gonna eliminate some of these positions right now because they're on contract, and like the teachers have schedules already set.
So the number of 900,000 that we were kind of throwing around, is that still what we're looking at as a deficit to finish out this year?
About, depending on,
At least.
yeah,
At least, maybe more.
And is that maybe more because we don't know if the state's
State
gonna...
funding.
right.
We just don't know.
And then we're looking at 3 million plus to start next year?
That's, yeah, to get back into building back our reserves.
Any other questions or comments?
Except I compliment you and the rest of the district administrative staff in particular for all this hard work. This
Thanks.
is hard.
It
It's
is.
hard for us up here to hear. We'll freeze our own salaries here, but, that's easy to do.
Yeah,
But
yeah. Thank you,
It's
though.
hard for us to hear how
Yeah.
much hard work and frustrating for us too that you have to go through this. It just is what it is.
That's right. It is tough times, and try and do the best we can.
And I think, unfortunately, I think there are many, many districts in the state of Illinois that are in the same place, that are having those
That
conversations.
doesn't make us feel.
It doesn't. It doesn't make us feel any better,
It's not
but,
just us, it's
yep,
everybody.
yep. There are many that are having even more difficult conversations than we are, and it's a tough time for us all.
Okay, thank you. Move on to construction management contracts. Dave. And team.
I'd like to introduce Corey Ho, project manager for O'Shea, and Tom Missel. He's the project executive for O'Shea Builders. They're here tonight representing O'Shea. Tonight, we'd like to recommend action to approve the construction management contracts for O'Shea Builders. Based on our conversations with our attorney and our budgetary review with both construction managers and our architectural team and our financial team. We're within budget at this time at schematic design. You don't have a comparison to say, but we are within budget, utilizing their services. So first, can you scroll to the top, please?
Jimmy Ball.
This is Ball Elementary, and we're well within budget there.
You want me to go to the next one?
I got a question on that one,
Go ahead.
if you want to go down. And it's the same one on all of them.
Yeah.
Keep going a little bit further
How
down.
about I let our O'Shea...
Do you want to wait till the end, or do you want to finish and then we'll
If
ask?
you don't mind.
No, not at all.
We'll come back to them. What we've done here is break out the various aspects of construction and constructability. O'Shea's job is to give us a good, better, best scenario in those budgets where we run a little tight. We're looking at all that as we go along. We've been meeting almost weekly with architects and CM team, even though they're not on board yet, to get to this point. Again, we are in schematic and design, we're out of programming, so we're about 50% into our design phases. So, next slide, please. Here we're looking at Glenwood K-4 school. That's a new elementary school. And if you scroll to the bottom, it tells you our estimate was at 5 million. That's our architectural estimate. We're just over 5 million, 27,000, I believe. Next slide. Glenwood Intermediate here, this portion of the budget is strictly for the addition. None of the interior work's represented here. And again, we're well within budget. That concludes my presentation for construction management. We do recommend that we approve these contracts. And if you've got questions, I've got my team up here to help me with answers.
The 10% and the 3%, can you explain the difference between those two, or what those are used for on the unassigned project costs and the contractor contingency?
Sure. Generally, right now, the 10%, Alan, is essentially what we would generally term in our industry a design contingency. The fact that we're about 50% through, as Dave talked about, in the process, there's still another 50% to go, and so there's going to be some changes in needs. Particularly security would be a great example of things that are kind of changing right now in the education world. And that 10% is to absorb some of that, the rest of that 50% design. And then the 3% is something we'll carry on through construction. Obviously, it's a risky business. Weather, things that the district is obviously well accustomed to in some of their other building projects. And that's what you would hold those 3% contingencies for, is to cover those things throughout the duration of the rest of construction until the end.
Is there a reason why you break them out into separate line items, or?
Generally, we want to do that for one. I think the biggest reason is getting the accounting right at the end of the day. This would be a guaranteed maximum, although we're not talking about the type of contract, where we basically say, here's our top ceiling lid, and obviously consistent with some of the decisions before the board tonight with not spending anything over this amount of money. And so you really just kind of identify that amount of money as something that's going to come back to you early, so you know kind of how you did in that design period versus construction.
Questions?
I guess my question
Yeah.
would be that the contracts were all reviewed by our attorney.
I did have one question here, and I've been looking for it here since you started, Dave, and there was something in here that stated that there was an addition, if there was a change order, that there was an addition that the contract management firm, there was a markup that the contract management firm would put onto that also?
Correct. If there's a change at the request of the district, or a change as needed as a part of design that's uncovered, we have a earthwork that we couldn't foresee, we've got to make some changes. They're going to incur costs to make those changes. It's only fair that they get compensated for things that we uncover or things that we add. So, not unlike the Gilbane contract, which we did the same thing with.
It was my understanding with that contract, though, that we got a bottom line price from the contract management, and that was the price, and there wasn't a charge for a change order that the contract management firm would do on it, because they'll be looking at that, but I don't understand why. That was my understanding of the last one, that there was no percentage that was put on by the contract management firm to do that. Because that's one of the reasons that we looked at contract management, is because with a regular general contractor, there's always that the subcontractor puts their percentage on, and then the general contractor puts their percentage on.
That's correct.
Well, then why do we want to go contract management if it's the same arrangement?
Jim, my recollection of Gilbane's contract was that they had that language in their contract. And I could research that a little further and get back to you on that. I don't,
Any comments by,
Generally, Jim, the construction management contract is a lot lower percentage of fee. That's a huge advantage to why you want to go with CM versus a GC. Generally, GC, you're going to see somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 to 15% markups on projects, and where CM fees are 2 to 6% generally. So part of that fee. And Jim, I would say really the only change you would ever receive using a construction management contract would be any change in scope of work. Anything that's a change in the scope is something that you would expect to pay for. And obviously, if you add satellite radio to your car, you'd expect to pay for it. So really, that's what we're talking about in terms of changes.
but if it's a change order from one, if a contractor makes a change from one type of material to another type of material, they may incur some additional costs on that, but that's not something then that contract management would come and we'd incur more costs on that?
No, generally, it really depends on the situation and what it is, but I would say to answer your question, generally, yes.
Okay.
how this contract works is that after the bids are let, these folks are going to guarantee that maximum price. Okay, the price won't exceed that number after the bids are let, unless we make a change.
Sure.
The district says, I don't want this, I want this.
Sure, okay. I just want to make sure I understand it, because I wasn't aware that, if that was in the last contract, I wasn't aware of that.
My sense this was a little different because this is not new construction, this is, but I could be wrong.
The last contract, I think, was negotiated a couple different times. And the last time it was negotiated, it was based on some other issues.
Okay.
And I think they were locked into a number that, because of some financial issues.
Okay.
In general, do you expect bids to come back relative to our last project? And I assume that you've done some study with.
You know, I talked with Todd this evening about bidding process, and right now, I'll let him tell you about materials, for instance.
I mean, right now, this is the best time you could ever have to build. I mean, you've kind of had the perfect storm. On the one hand, you're talking about operation deficiencies and needing to cut budgets, and now you're saying, hey, there's a reason that we need to build in our district for growth's sake. Obviously, taking on one child every day, as the rate would be in the first part of this semester. But basically, what you're seeing is with kind of where the marketplace is right now, the absolute best time to build. Prices of steel, copper, metals, drywall, lumber, everything is down. Obviously, we kind of tail end of the economy. So as the economy gets better, you would expect that prices would come up. But right now, it's kind of the
same way with
market.
Sorry, Todd. It's the same way with labor. Any other questions?
You've given us a summary sheet a month or so ago, and it's in phase 1 addition and phase 1 renovation. These three designs are all for the phase 1 addition, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Not phase 2.
Just
Phase 2
addition.
is yet to be worked.
We don't have any money for phase 2 yet. So, any other questions?
And we can't take this money and put it into the ed fund, can we?
No, we can't.
That'd be illegal.
This, by law, this was when we passed the referendum, it was for building expansion and renovation, health, life, safety. So we are restricted by what uses we can put this money to.
I knew that, but I was hoping maybe something would have changed.
There was a change today in the legislature or something?
Yeah.
Well, that's why we carefully worded that referendum. It was a difficult one to do because we have to carefully word it so that it's all encompassing, so that we make sure we do all the projects that we aren't maybe even thinking about today, such as changes in security. And, we want to make sure that we have all of that. So we said things that were a little bit more broad in scope, such as additions or renovations, But we also, on the flip side of that, wanted it to be as specific as possible for our public. When they were voting for the referendum, we really wanted them to understand that it was for these specific reasons, not for, other projects. And so we really tried to make it, narrow it enough in scope that people would understand what they were voting for, but then again, general enough that we could say, we need to have a new addition onto this school because now we need to have, security monitors, as you're walking through the building, those types of things. We needed to make sure we had some flexibility, but so we are very, very much tied by, in those bonds, exactly what we will spend them on. And that has been a question that I'm glad Lisa brought it up, because some of our public has said things such as, well, you just passed $35 million in referendum, you're selling those bonds, why can't we use those to pay the salaries of the people that you're reducing? And clearly that's illegal. And we know that, but it's not fair to assume that the general public knows that when it was passed, it was for these specific reasons. And we do know that we have to add on, and we also know that we're going to have to staff those buildings. We're going to have to staff those additions. So another reason yet to tighten our belts this year, so that we can afford to add the staff as the students start coming in, which is what you're seeing on your enrollment spreadsheet. They keep coming, and we're meeting their needs today. But we know if the rate continues, which anywhere you drive in the district, you can see the holes in the ground, that you can see that we're going to need to still keep adding, and our projections tell us that we have to add on to these buildings and therefore be able to staff them in the future. And that's what our goal has been all along. But it does become confusing sometimes, rightfully so.
Any other questions?
Anything else? Any other comments, Dave, or anything? Thank you for putting everything together. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Todd and Corey.
We're excited about getting started.
Yes.
Putting this team on, they've been working with us without a contract now for about a month and a half.
You knew it was coming.
We thank you.
Let's vote.
Your vote will work tomorrow.
When do you
Otherwise,
see,
the buck stops here, huh?
when do you see bids going out for some of this work? I mean, we all don't have it later on in the spring?
Late spring.
Okay.
Save a brick for me from Ball.
I'll bring it over first.
Okay.
We'll grab one and put it in my truck.
Unless it's full of asbestos.
We just want to tell you.
Because it's,
Just don't breathe.
yeah, just to say that they're going to
Okay.
eventually do that work.
And we can,
It's just that it's.
you'll move to okay these construction management contracts for Ball Elementary,
You're unhappy with it.
GHS, GIS, and Glenwood Elementary. That's your motion? Thank you. And a second, please.
Second?
Thank you, Alan. Any other comments, questions? Call the roll, please.
Yes.
Carly?
Yes.
Sweatter?
Yes.
Meyer?
Yes.
Weitzel?
Yes.
Carter?
Yes.
Mrs.
Yes. Next item we have here is a bid, approve the bid to rehabilitate the track surface at GHS and GMS. Again, Dave?
As I've shown you for the last 3 years, we've had some needs at the high school. We looked at the middle school this past year, and we've got some spots in the middle school where it's coming up. We've made repair over the past 3 years to the middle school. Middle school is a little bit different application, different process. It only lasted us 5 years. The high school, however, has lasted us almost 13 years. Very happy with that product. Which coincidentally, Track Service Company, who happens to be the low bidder, installed that surface for us 13 years ago. They're very familiar with the track surface. They're very familiar with the middle school. They've been up here. They've called. We've researched their number. There's quite a difference in their number between them and the next contractor. We made sure that they were a prevailing wage contractor, that they understand the scope of work, and based on our conversations between the architect and myself, we're confident these folks can do the work at the price that they submitted. And they're also confident, that, again, they came to the district and walked the tracks. They understand the scope of work. So we're recommending tonight that Track Surface Company be our contractor to make the rehabilitation to our tracks.
Well, the high school and the middle school.
Yes.
The high
Yeah.
school and the middle school.
That's the total
Yes,
for
that's
both.
correct.
Yes, yeah, total for both. And if you scroll down a little bit more, Betsy, you can see the original bid, or the original estimate, the architect's estimate was $150,000, so. And is this out of health, life, safety money?
This is actually out of referendum money, part of
Okay.
the projects that are on my bucket.
Okay. Okay, so basically, that $46,000 goes to something else that we need somewhere
Yeah,
else in
we're
the
looking
district.
at inter-control points and security issues.
Okay, great, okay.
So is this a complete resurface or just kind of like a maintenance coat?
It's a maintenance coat, but it's a very durable maintenance coat. They come in and they put more of the rubber down, and then they spray and I'm not sure the name of the product that they use, but it's an overspray, and it penetrates down through the existing rubber and adheres to the asphalt. Unfortunately, we didn't have that at the middle school. We will now have that with this product, and it should enhance that track to last 10 years or better, which is the average for this product. So we're excited about putting this down at the middle school. Middle school track will go from black to red. That'll be changed.
Anything else? Okay, thanks, Dave. There are no other questions, comments. I need a motion then to approve the bid to rehabilitate the athletic track services at GHS and GMS as presented this evening.
I'll make that motion,
Thank you.
because I love to run.
And a second, please.
Second?
Thank you. And call the roll, please.
Yes, Harley.
Yes.
Sweater.
Yes.
Peter Meyer.
Yes.
Thanks,
Weissel.
Dave.
Yes.
Carter.
Thanks, guys.
Todd.
Yes.
Thanks, Todd.
Yes. Okay, moving on to some first reading of some policies. Who's,
Actually, Betsy's gonna present this.
oh, okay.
Can I just sit here?
You can just sit there.
Okay. We noticed in October that IASB finally rolled out their social media policy. And in reviewing that, it seemed like a pretty comprehensive one, at least one that we could build from. And I also noted that, we're having board elections coming up in April with 4 new seats, potentially. And I thought that if we were to go ahead and approve the social media policy that IASB recommends, we could then, when the new board elections come around, revisit it at that point, since it's the board's role to, obviously approve policy and
Sure.
set policy. So it was something to sort of get us covered right now, and then revisit it in a few months.
She's expecting a more cooperative board.
Yes, no. I
We
didn't-
get it.
So that was basically what this is.
Okay.
We modified it just slightly to fit our district a little better, but it's pretty much is what IASB has recommended, and their legal team has researched it pretty thoroughly.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd say there was very little change from
Yeah, very little,
IASB.
just to make our policies sort of match. But it did sort of, and I know that Mrs. Larson or Ms. Valencia will talk about it, but it does sort of change some of the other cross-reference policies to make sure that we're exactly right when they reference those.
Let me point out, too, that these 3 policies are for information only tonight. First reading, they'll come back second reading next month for approval. Okay?
Do we have our
go
legal
ahead.
look at this, or are these?
There's actually no need to if we take the press services, because they have their legal department. That's one of the benefits that you have as being part of the school board association. And they have a whole team, rather than Rick trying to take that on, in review. He reviews our contracts, anything we signed, for example, the O'Shea contract. But the policies are, when we take them from the IASB, it's their entire policy team that puts those out to, we pay for that service for them to provide those.
And we've modified those, but that doesn't,
Just
Right.
slightly, only in cross-referencing what the titles of it, like cross-reference policies are, to match, our titles will match what theirs.
Right.
okay, I see.
That was it.
And it's cited, yes.
Yes, it's cited.
Good point. Yep.
Okay. And then the next one, is that you too, Betsy? or is that- Oh, okay. Thank you.
Well, there's a trickle-down effect in that policy, creating that policy. ISB actually took policy 5130, I'm sorry, and completely changed it. There was just a little bit of change that Betsy had to do for her policy, but this one is totally different. It used to be the gift ban policy, and they deleted that one completely and renamed it responsibilities concerning internal information, and that has to do with how we handle confidential information and privacy issues in the workplace. And the corresponding administrative procedure discusses specifically emails and how we're going to handle email retention. The gift ban policy that used to be there is actually now addressed in the ethics policy. So it still does exist, it's just been placed with a different policy. So, that's it.
Any questions? Thank you. Okay. On to communications, on the round table, is there,
Did you get 11.6?
Yeah, there's one more.
oh, I thought somebody said, mentioned the email one. I'm sorry.
They're actually, it's just listed it twice.
It's listed twice, yeah. It was, you're right.
And there was policy and then administrative procedure.
Okay.
Yeah, you're right though, Jim, it was
Sorry.
on that one too,
Yeah.
so,
Yeah,
yep.
listed twice.
You were both right.
Okay, now on to 12.1. Anything that, Linda, you had?
Yes, I had the privilege of being invited to the governor's meeting on school safety, January 22nd. It was a very interesting meeting. There was a wide range of people there. I was there representing a local Board of Education perspective. Randy Allen was also there as a school security officer perspective. And really, there were three basic things that came out of that meeting. In the discussion, it was that we need to ensure throughout the state of Illinois that our facilities are safe, they're secure, and that we constantly need to look at the security of our buildings. And just as we were saying in the new plans for the additions to our buildings, those will be something that we'll need to look at. We also talked a lot about the relationships that we have with law enforcement officials, both local, state, and federal, and using the information that they have available to school districts to help in assessing threats that we may have to our district. It was very good that we really do have a good relationship with our local law officials, law enforcement officials. And the third one unanimously was that we need to address the mental health issues that are in our schools, being able to identify those students who have mental health issues that may pose a threat either to themselves or to others, but then also extend that to our community so that we know any of the threat levels that may be in our community. And then how do we communicate that information between school and law enforcement officials? It was really a very good meeting. I felt very privileged to be able to be involved in it. It made me realize that what we do in looking at our facilities, our plans, our procedures, we look at that often, and that's a very good thing, that we make sure that we are up to date on all of that information.
Additionally to that, you know, the state police is headquartered here in Springfield, and they probably every summer, Mr. Lee, I mean, they often conduct exercises at our high school and at our facilities, and they're very aware of our facilities.
Oh, yeah, very much so. All the local authorities are.
Yeah, and I just think it's a great advantage.
Well, last year, we had two school, we did first responder drills. Two of our schools will be doing one February 15th in general.
It's great.
So, practice.
I just think it's great, Linda, that you were able to participate in that.
And she actually got Mr. Randy Allen invited. It was because of Linda inviting him and saying, let's bring him to the table as well. So thank you for that, because he has truly been our proactive. We've always been somewhat, decades ago, we were more reactive to issues, but now we're very proactive in terms of planning and practicing and drills and, having conversations about even things such as how we communicate to the public when something happens and how we communicate. We're constantly tweaking those protocols, and it's because of, our conversations that we have, and including Randy and all of that, it's, so thanks to Linda for actually inviting, getting Randy on the very exclusive list for that meeting, so that was great.
I heard from, we had our board went to the, oh gosh, okay, it's been a very long couple of days. The show choir legislation that we had passed, the IASB. And I heard from Zach Messersmith at the IASB. We spoke this morning. The bill has come back from the LRB, the Legislative Reference Bureau, and we talked about legislators to speak with, who he's going to speak with about being the sponsor for the bill, and so that's moving forward. I was really glad to see that, too.
It's great.
John, did you want to mention anything about the goals setting that we had the other night?
Oh, we had a nice kind of retreat, I call it retreat meeting, about kind of filling in the connection between the strategic initiative and everything else that we do, including our own performance evaluation of the district and the superintendent, trying to kind of articulate the goals that should be in the middle of that to help us connect what we do here and what Carrie does every day with the strategic initiative above. And then to kind of update it too, as people are aware that the dates on the bottom part are kind of out of date. So we're trying to update that without redoing it. We're just trying to connect it.
And I'd like to thank the candidates who were in attendance. Ms. Worley, Mr. Yurovich, and Dr. Maddox joined us in that, and their input was valuable, so thank you.
I had that the board meeting for Capillary Vocational Capillary Career Center, I'm dating myself, but our board meeting's tomorrow. At long last, we'll get back to maybe talking about conversation and governance issues out there, and also trying to set a vision and hopefully plan for a better future for CACC. And so if anybody's got any ideas in that regard, I appreciate them, although our director's back now, and I think he's doing well, and hopefully we'll start moving forward on that.
Good, okay. Anything else? Okay. Carrie, anything?
No, just thanks to our community and our staff and board for the support on these tough decisions, so I appreciate it.
12/3 is some future board meeting dates. Board candidate orientation meeting on the 5th. We have the second part 2 of our board goal setting board retreat on February 19th. And then board meetings, regular board meeting February 25th, our personnel meeting on March 11th, and then March 18th, our regular March meeting. And then there's some other dates for you. School's closed. Is that President's Day weekend? Is that what it is? Is it? Okay.
18th, yep.
And then
It's not
spring
President's
break.
Day, it's College Visit Day.
And then spring break. So
Has the Educational Association decided on a candidate forum?
I haven't heard it. We haven't heard anything.
Can I put you on the spot?
No, they are
Okay.
working
Oh,
on it.
there she
and
is.
They will be contacting you soon.
Thank you.
We just had our meeting last weekend, it was discussed.
Okay.
I know we've got the Chamber of Commerce.
Chamber of Commerce has theirs set,
The
yep.
library.
We do.
When is that? You know?
13th.
March 13th?
Tomorrow night.
March 13th?
March
I guess they were looking at perhaps the week before that.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
And perhaps after they just speak with the administrator at GIS.
Okay.
GIS.
Okay.
President Larson will be contacting you.
Okay.
That's a good
Thank you.
response. She's on that.
Okay. If there's nothing else in that item, then we'll move on to opportunity for visitors to address the school board concerning any topic. Anybody wish to address the board tonight? Okay, thank you. And with that, anything else from the board? If nothing, need a motion to adjourn. John, thank you. And a second, please.
Second.
Thank you, Alan. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you, everybody.